The August 28th Pisces lunar eclipse at 12:14 a.m. Eastern Standard has a way of bringing something into focus that you may have been avoiding, questioning, or trying to make sense of for a while. This 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse forms a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, a square with Uranus and Gemini, and a trine to Mars in Cancer. In this video, we'll explore the life area reaching a turning point by your rising sign, what this eclipse is bringing to the surface emotionally, the situation, belief, or relationship that may be ready to change, and how to work with this eclipse so you can move forward with more awareness instead of repeating the same patterns. So grab your birth chart, find your rising sign, and let's dive in.
Hey, Aries rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in realizing you don't have to keep fighting battles that are already over. With this energy, something may finally make sense in hindsight. There are experiences that you understand while they're happening, and then there are experiences you don't fully understand until you are far enough away from them to see what they actually did to you. This eclipse can bring one of those realizations. So, something from your past may look completely different from where you're standing now. You may understand why you made a certain decision, why something affected you as deeply as it did, or why you've continued reacting to situations that aren't actually happening anymore. You don't need to rewrite the past. You may simply need to be more ready to stop letting it write what happens next. What are you still protecting yourself from that is no longer happening? Now, for this Pisces eclipse, this is going to be landing in your 12th house. So, this is bringing something that has been operating quietly in the background to the surface. And sometimes what comes up isn't a dramatic secret or a buried memory. It's a pattern that you've gotten so used to that you stop noticing it. So maybe you automatically expect disappointment before anything has gone wrong. Maybe you prepare for conflict before anyone has challenged you. Or maybe you keep one foot out the door because being caught off guard once taught you never to feel too comfortable again. That type of energy is what can become obvious now. So you may realize that you're still organizing parts of your present around something that happened in your past. The interesting part is that you may not need to work on it anymore. You may simply see it clearly enough that you can't keep doing it unconsciously. And once you understand what something has been doing in the background, it becomes much harder for it to keep running your life without your permission. Now, this eclipse is going to form four major aspects. The first is going to be a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your second house. So, this is connecting what you're releasing with the way you've learned to measure your own value. So, you may recognize how much of your confidence has been built around proving that you're capable, proving that you can recover, proving you can make the money, proving you don't need anyone, or even proving the person who underestimated you was wrong. That kind of motivation can take you far, but eventually you may reach a point where you don't want your success to remain emotionally attached to whoever made you question yourself in the first place. So, a good question to ask is, would you still want what you're chasing if there were no one left to prove wrong? This eclipse can help separate genuine desire from old insecurity. You can still want more. You just don't need to need more in order to finally feel like enough. The second aspect is going to be in opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your sixth house. And this can make it difficult to ignore what your everyday life has been telling you. So your mind may be super busy around this eclipse. You could find yourself thinking about everything that you haven't finished, everything that needs fixing, every responsibility that's waiting for you, or every possible explanation for what you're feeling. With this eclipse energy, sometimes constantly staying busy is exactly how you avoid hearing yourself. So, a disruption to your routine, a conversation at work, exhaustion, or simply reaching your limit could make something very clear. You cannot organize your way out of something that actually needs to be felt. So, give yourself room to process before immediately turning every emotion into another problem to fix. The next aspect is going to be a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your third house. So, this can bring a sudden mental breakthrough. So, something may click. You may hear a sentence differently. You could receive unexpected information. You could have a conversation that you weren't planning to have, or a thought comes into your mind that completely changes how you've been interpreting a situation. You may even catch yourself telling the same old story about your life and suddenly think, wait, do I even believe this anymore? That's the breakthrough, because sometimes the story survives much longer than the experience that created it. So be open to changing your mind around this eclipse. You don't owe an old belief permanent loyalty simply because it once helped you to make sense of your life. The final aspect this eclipse will be making is a trine to Mars in Cancer in your fourth house. So, this is giving you somewhere productive to put everything that's being released. So you may feel an urge to clean your home, clear things out, reorganize, move furniture, handle something involving your family, spend more time privately, or just make your environment feel different. Be sure you follow that instinct. Sometimes changing your physical environment helps your mind to understand that a chapter really is over. And this can also help you to respond differently to old family dynamics. You may notice that something that once triggered an immediate reaction doesn't hit the same way anymore. Or you may finally have the confidence to say, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's not as a threat or even to start another argument. It's simply because you've reached your limit with carrying the same emotional pattern forward. Your home should reflect the peace that you're trying to create, not constantly reconnect you with the version of yourself you're trying to leave behind. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this eclipse is first to catch yourself in an old reaction. So, when something triggers you, ask whether you're responding to what's actually happening or what you've learned to expect. Next is to stop trying to earn your worth through recovery. You don't need another difficult situation to overcome in order to prove how strong you are. So be sure to keep that in mind. Next is to give yourself some mental silence. Turn something off, put the phone down, take the walk without distractions. Let yourself hear what's underneath all the noise. Next is to change something in your environment. So clear out what feels heavy, unfinished, or attached to a chapter that you don't want to keep revisiting. And finally, let a realization be enough. You don't have to turn every breakthrough into another project. Sometimes seeing the pattern clearly is what finally breaks it. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I am no longer living in response to what already happened. I trust what I see clearly now and give myself permission to move forward without carrying the past with me. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if you're on this journey with me, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay tapped in together. And there's only so much I can say here. So a one-on-one with me is where we make it specific to you. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match exactly what you need. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Taurus rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in noticing which connections still feel real and which ones are only surviving because of history. One of the core themes for this eclipse with you is going to be that you may be outgrowing the future you once wanted. So there are dreams that you carry because they still matter. And then there are dreams that you keep carrying because you've had them for so long that letting them go feels strange. This eclipse can help you tell the difference. You may look at a friendship, a goal, a community, or a long term plan and realize you're no longer emotionally attached to it in the same way. And not necessarily because something went wrong, you may have simply changed. And sometimes the hardest thing to admit is that what once felt exciting now feels like maintenance. So, what are you still trying to make work simply because it used to mean something to you? Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your 11th house. So, this is going to bring a turning point around friendships, long term goals, audiences, networks, and the future that you've been building toward. So, this can show up through a friendship ending, a group dynamic changing, a collaboration completing, or a goal finally reaching a point where you either commit to it differently or let it go. You may also notice that some relationships only worked because an older version of you was willing to keep showing up the same way. So maybe you were always the one reaching out, the one keeping everyone connected, the one making excuses for people, or the one staying loyal long after the relationship stopped feeling mutual. Those types of dynamics can become harder to justify now. This eclipse may also change your relationship with ambition. So you may realize that something you once wanted badly doesn't feel as important anymore, or a goal you've been working toward finally comes into focus and you realize that you've been chasing the idea of it more than the actual life it would create. So, over the next 6 months, your future may become less about keeping every option open and more about knowing which people and goals actually deserve to come with you. Now, this eclipse is going to form 4 major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, of course, currently in your first house, which can make this deeply personal. So, you may notice how certain friendships or communities have shaped the way you see yourself. So some connections helped you to grow, and others may have taught you to shrink, second guess yourself, or stay agreeable so that you could keep belonging. This eclipse can make you much more aware of where you've been editing yourself to stay connected. So you may suddenly realize, I don't even like who I become around these people. And that type of realization matters because sometimes the issue isn't whether a relationship is technically bad, it's whether you have become less of yourself to stay in it. And this eclipse can help you to choose connection without self abandonment. The second aspect is going to be an opposition to Mercury and Virgo, currently in your fifth house. So, this is creating tension between what other people expect from you and what you personally want. So, you may find yourself thinking about how much of your life has been shaped by what will make sense to everyone else. What will people approve of? What your audience will respond to? What your friends will understand? Or what looks like the smart choice? And meanwhile, something you actually want has been sitting off to the side, such as a creative idea or a personal project or something that you want to enjoy without having to justify it. This eclipse can make you realize that not every decision needs group approval. When did what everyone else thinks become more important than whether you actually enjoy your own life? That may be the conversation Mercury forces you to have with yourself. The next aspect this eclipse is going to form is a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your second house. This can bring an unexpected change in your priorities, finances, or your sense of security. So, a financial development may affect a friendship, a group, a collaboration, or a long term plan. Or you may simply realize that the future you're building needs a different relationship with money than the one you've had until now. You may become less willing to spend money to keep up appearances, less willing to invest in opportunities that don't feel worth it, or even less willing to stay connected to people or spaces that make you feel like you have to prove your value. This can be a real reset around what you're willing to pay for, work for, and tolerate. Sometimes your values change before your circumstances do. And once they do, your choices start changing too. The final aspect is going to be a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your third house. So, this is going to be helping you to say what needs to be said. So, a conversation could bring closure. You may finally address something with a friend, a sibling, a collaborator, or a group that you've been avoiding because you didn't want to create tension. Or you may simply become much more direct about what you want moving forward. Now, this, of course, isn't about starting conflict. It's about no longer pretending you're okay with something when you're not. You may also feel more motivated to speak, write, teach, share your ideas, or connect with people who actually understand where you're coming from. Sometimes the fastest way to find your people is to stop watering down what you really think. Now, some of the best ways to work with the energy of this Pisces eclipse is first to look at who you're still connected to out of habit. History alone isn't always a reason to keep a relationship going. Next is to revisit your long term goals and make sure that you're still working towards something you actually want. Next is to stop editing yourself to belong. The right people shouldn't require a smaller version of you. Next is to let your values guide your decisions. So if something no longer feels worth your time, money, or energy, pay attention. And finally, say what you've been avoiding. One honest conversation may clear up more than months of overthinking. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I choose relationships and goals that still feel true to who I am. I trust what has changed within me and allow my future to change with it. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if you're on this journey with me, be sure to like this video, send it to your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay tapped in together. And if you felt seen here, a one-on-one is where we take that surface recognition and turn it into real personalized guidance. One session with me can shift how you see your entire life. Plus, I have over 10 different session styles that you can customize to whatever you're working through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Gemini rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power lies in recognizing when a goal has become more about proving something than actually wanting it. With the energy of this eclipse, you may be redefining what success means to you. Now, there are goals that still excite you when you imagine reaching them. And then there are goals that only feel important because of what you think they would say about you. This eclipse can make that difference impossible to ignore. You may look at your career, reputation, long term plans, or the version of success you've been chasing and realize that some of it no longer feels personal. Maybe it once did. Maybe it gave you something to work toward. Maybe it helped you become who you are now. But that doesn't automatically mean it belongs in your future. What are you still trying to achieve because you think it will finally make you feel like enough? This 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your 10th house. So, this is going to bring a turning point around your career, your reputation, your public image, leadership, and the direction you're known for. So, this can bring a professional ending, a change in your title, a shift in responsibility, recognition for work that you've already done, or the realization that a path you've been committed to no longer feels like yours. You may also become more aware of the gap between what looks successful and what actually feels meaningful. Maybe you've reached a point where the title doesn't impress you anymore. The validation doesn't hit the same. The goal you once obsessed over suddenly feels empty. Or you may finally see that you've been building a version of success around what would make other people respect you. That can be a hard realization, but it's also going to be very freeing for you because once you're no longer chasing a life for the reaction it gets, you can start building one that actually fits. Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in being impressive and much more interested in being proud of the life you're actually living. Now, this eclipse is going to form 4 major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your 12th house. And this is connecting your public life with something much more private. So you may start seeing how an old insecurity has been shaping your ambition. So maybe you learned early on that achievement got attention, that being useful made you valuable, that being impressive made you harder to dismiss, or that if you accomplished enough, no one would question you. That type of motivation can build a lot, but it can also make success feel like something you can never fully arrive at. This eclipse may help you to see where your ambition has been carrying an old wound. And this is going to happen because you stop needing every accomplishment to fix something inside of you. So use this energy to ask yourself, what would I still want if no one was watching? That answer may be much closer to your real path. The next aspect is going to be in opposition with Mercury in Virgo, currently in your fourth house. So, this is bringing your public life and your private life into direct conversation. So, you may find yourself thinking more seriously about what success is costing you. So, this could be your time, your peace, your home life, your ability to switch off, or your emotional availability. Something around this eclipse may make it clear that a career decision doesn't only affect your resume, it affects the way you live every day. So you may have an important conversation about work and home, family responsibilities, relocation, or whether the life that you're building actually gives you somewhere to land. What good is a successful life if you never feel settled inside of it? Under this energy, Mercury can make that question much harder to avoid. Next is going to be a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently, of course, in your first house. And this can actually bring a sudden change in how you see yourself. So you may realize that you've been trying to fit into a professional identity that no longer matches the person you've become. So maybe you've changed faster than your career has. Maybe you've outgrown the way people know you. Or maybe the version of you that built this path simply isn't the version that's going to continue it. This type of energy can feel disruptive, but it's also going to be liberating because you may suddenly want more freedom, independence, more room to experiment, or even just more space to do things your own way. And once you see that, it's going to be hard to go back. When it comes to this, sometimes the career shift isn't the first thing that happens. Sometimes the identity shift comes first, and then the career has no choice but to catch up. And finally, this eclipse will be forming a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your second house. So, this is going to help you to act on what you're realizing. So you may feel more motivated to negotiate, raise your rates, pursue a different income source, take a financial risk, or make a career decision that better reflects what you know you're worth. This can also help you to stop accepting professional situations that ask for too much while giving too little back. You may be more willing to say, "This doesn't work for me anymore," and mean it. Money may also play a role in whatever changes now, but so will self respect. Because sometimes the clearest sign that your standards have changed is that you're no longer willing to be underpaid, overworked, or undervalued just to keep a certain title. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this eclipse is to first look at what you're still trying to prove. If a goal only matters because of how you think it will make you look, question whether you still want it. Next is to notice what success is costing you. Your career should support your life, not consume it. Next is to let your identity change first. You don't have to force a career decision before you understand who you're becoming. Next is to make money part of the conversation. If your standards have changed, your compensation and work agreements may need to change too. And finally, give yourself permission to want something different. Outgrowing a goal doesn't erase the work it took to reach it. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I define success in a way that feels true to me. I trust what has changed within me and allow my career, choices, and future to reflect who I am now. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And of course, be sure to tap like if you feel called out in a good way. Pass this on to your friends, hype this video, and subscribe to keep growing with me. And if you felt seen here, a one on one is where we take that surface recognition and turn it into real personalized guidance. One session with me can shift how you see your entire life. Plus, I have over 10 different session types that you can customize to whatever you're working through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Cancer Rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in being willing to question what you once thought you had to believe. This means that your worldview may be changing faster than you realize. Sometimes a belief doesn't disappear all at once. You just stop reaching for it. So, a rule you used to live by stops making sense. A path you thought you had to follow starts feeling too narrow. Or an idea about success, spirituality, relationships, education, or what your life is supposed to look like starts losing its grip. This eclipse can bring that kind of shift. This is going to be because you're going to be finally willing to admit that some of your old answers no longer work. So, what are you still believing simply because you've believed it for a long time? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your ninth house, which is going to bring a turning point around your beliefs, education, spirituality, travel, teaching, publishing, and the bigger meaning you give to your life. This can also show up through something more concrete. So you could finish a course, complete a degree, take a trip that changes your perspective, publish something, decide to teach what you know, or step away from a belief system, path, or plan that no longer feels true. But the deeper change can actually be something that's a little bit more simple. You may realize that you've been living by ideas that you never actually chose, such as what success should look like, what a respectable path should be, what kind of life is realistic, what you're too old or too late to do, or even what you're allowed to want. And around this eclipse, some of those rules may stop sounding convincing. So, over the next 6 months, you could care a lot less about having the right answer and a lot more about building a life around what feels true from your own experience. Now, this lunar eclipse is going to be forming 4 major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron, currently in Taurus in your 11th house. So, this is going to be connecting your changing beliefs with the people and communities around you. So, you may become more aware of how much your sense of belonging has influenced what you think you're allowed to believe, want, or pursue. So, maybe you've stayed connected to certain ideas because they were shared by your friends. Maybe you avoided talking about what you really think because you didn't want to sound different. Or maybe you quietly changed your mind a long time ago, but never fully admitted it because you were afraid of losing your place in the group. This eclipse can help you to see something important. Belonging shouldn't require intellectual or spiritual self abandonment. The right people don't need you to think exactly like them. And as your worldview changes, your community may naturally change too. The next aspect is going to be an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, which is currently in your third house. And this can make your mind extremely active. So you may find yourself going back and forth between the bigger picture and the details. One part of you sees where you're headed, another part keeps asking, but how? What if I'm wrong? What about this detail? What if I missed something? That mental back and forth can be exhausting if you let every question become a reason not to move. A conversation, piece of information, or new perspective could also challenge something that you've believed for a long time. Don't rush to defend the old answer. Instead, ask yourself, am I trying to understand this or am I trying to prove what I already think? That distinction can open a completely different door. Next, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your 12th house. So, this can bring a sudden realization from somewhere deep underneath the surface. So, you may have a dream, memory, intuitive hit, or a strange moment of clarity that changes the way that you understand something. This can also show you where you've been unconsciously limiting your own growth. Maybe you say you want more freedom, but part of you is still attached to being the good one, the responsible one, the one who doesn't disappoint anyone, the one who follows the rules, the one who gets it right. That conflict can become much harder to ignore with this eclipse. So you may realize that some of your strongest limitations were never external. They were internalized expectations that you stopped questioning. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Finally, this lunar eclipse is going to form a trine to Mars in Cancer, of course, currently in your first house. So, this is going to be giving you the confidence to act on what you're realizing. So, you may feel ready to make a decision that previously felt too big. So, book the trip, apply for the course, teach what you know, publish the work, say what you believe, change direction, or simply stop explaining why your path looks different from what other people expected. Mars being in your first house can make this personal because you're not just changing your mind. You're changing the way that you move through the world because of what you now understand. And I think that may be the biggest gift of this eclipse for you. You stop waiting for your life to make sense according to someone else's map, and you instead start trusting your own. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is first to question one belief that you've been treating like a fact, especially if it came from family, school, culture, religion, or other people's expectations. Next is to let yourself change your mind. You don't have to defend an old belief just because you once believed it deeply. Next is to be careful with information overload. More research isn't always the answer. At some point, you have to trust what you already know. Next is to notice where belonging has shaped your thinking. So make sure the people around you leave room for you to evolve. And finally, act on one truth that feels undeniable now. A realization matters more when your life begins reflecting it. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I trust the truth I have lived into for myself. I release beliefs that no longer fit and allow my life to expand in a direction that feels honest, free, and fully mine. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you feel like you've outgrown where you are, but don't know what comes next, a one on one with me will help you understand exactly what's shifting and why. Plus, I have over 10 different session types that you can customize to whatever you're working through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Leo rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is in knowing when something needs to be renegotiated instead of endlessly tolerated. With this energy, you are seeing more clearly what you're entangled with. Some things are obvious commitments: a loan, a contract, a business partnership, or a relationship. And then there are the invisible commitments: the guilt, the emotional debt, the unspoken expectation, the feeling that because someone helped you once, you owe them forever. This eclipse can make those hidden agreements much easier to see. You may realize that something has had more influence over your decisions than you thought. What are you still tied to because you feel obligated, indebted, or responsible? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse lands in your 8th house. And this is going to be bringing a turning point around money, trust, support, intimacy, debt, financial agreements, and the deeper ways your life is connected to other people. This can bring a real world development around taxes, debt, loans, investments, inheritances, business funding, shared accounts, insurance, or money that involves someone else. But this eclipse can also expose where the exchange has become uneven. So maybe you're giving more than you're receiving. Maybe someone has too much influence over your decisions because money is involved. Maybe you've stayed emotionally connected to a person or situation because you still feel like something is unresolved. You may also realize that some form of support comes with a price you're no longer willing to pay. This means that not every offer is actually helpful. Not every financial arrangement creates freedom. And not every emotional bond deserves permanent access to you. Over the next 6 months, you may become much more careful about what you merge with, who you trust, and what you're willing to owe. Now, this eclipse is going to form four major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your 10th house. And this is connecting these deeper financial or emotional themes with your career and public life. So you may recognize how much professional pressure has shaped your relationship with money. So maybe you've felt like you always have to look like you're doing well. Maybe asking for help feels embarrassing because you think you should already have everything figured out. Maybe you've accepted a bad deal because you wanted the opportunity. Or maybe you've stayed financially attached to something because you were afraid of what leaving would mean for your career. This eclipse can help you separate status from actual security. What have you been willing to tolerate because you thought it was the price of success? That question can change the way you negotiate, collaborate, or build from here. Next, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form an opposition to Mercury currently in Virgo in your second house. So, this is going to be putting your own money and values directly across from what you share with other people. So, this can bring important financial conversations. Who pays for what? Who owns what? What is fair? What needs to be repaid? What are you willing to invest? What are you no longer willing to fund? You may need to look at numbers more closely around this eclipse. And this is not because everything is going wrong. This is more because assumptions can create problems when money is involved. This is also about value. So you may realize that you've been making decisions based on what someone else needs instead of what actually makes sense for you. So sometimes the cleanest financial boundary is simply that doesn't work for me. And you may be much more ready to say that statement under the energy of this eclipse. Next, this eclipse will be forming a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your 11th house. So, this is bringing unpredictability through friends, groups, collaborations, audiences, or long term plans. So, a group project could change. A financial agreement within a collaboration may need to be updated. A friendship could suddenly reveal an imbalance around support, trust, or expectations. You may also receive an unexpected opportunity through your network that requires you to think differently about money or shared resources. This aspect can also show you very quickly who is truly collaborative and who only likes the relationship when you play a certain role. You may realize that a future goal depends too heavily on someone else's participation. Because Uranus is involved, that can be unsettling at first, but it can also push you to build something with more independence and flexibility. Finally, this eclipse will be forming a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your 12th house. So, this is going to be helping you to act on something that you've been processing privately. You may have known for a while that an arrangement needed to change. You just weren't ready to deal with it yet. And because we have this eclipse, now you may be ready. So, this can look like paying something off, ending an agreement, setting a financial boundary, cutting an emotional cord, or finally dealing with something that you've been avoiding because it felt complicated. The action itself may happen quietly. You don't need a dramatic confrontation. You may just simply decide that something no longer gets access to your money, your energy, your vulnerability, or your future. And that's enough. Sometimes closure isn't necessarily a conversation, it's a decision. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces eclipse is to first look closely at what you're sharing: money, time, access, information, emotional labor. Make sure the exchange still makes sense. Next is to put financial agreements in clear language. Don't rely on assumptions when numbers, ownership, or repayment are involved. Next is to notice where guilt is influencing your decisions. Remember that feeling obligated doesn't automatically mean you're actually responsible. Next is to revisit collaborations that feel uneven. If the structure no longer works, change the structure. And finally, make one clean decision. So pay it off, renegotiate it, end it, or set the boundary you've been avoiding. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I choose clear, balanced, and supportive exchanges. I trust myself to release obligations that no longer fit and protect what I value moving forward. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you felt seen here, a one-on-one is where we take that surface recognition and turn it into real personalized guidance. One session with me can shift how you see your entire life. Plus, I have over 10 session types that you can customize to whatever you're working through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Virgo rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is in seeing a relationship for what it is now, not what you hoped it would become. Under the energy of this eclipse, you're getting clearer about who you can actually build with. Relationships can stay in our lives long after the dynamic itself has changed. Sometimes because of history, sometimes because of loyalty, sometimes because we've invested too much to want to admit that something no longer works the way it used to. This eclipse can make that harder to ignore. You may start seeing a partner, client, collaborator, or close relationship with much more honesty. And it's not necessarily because something is wrong, but more so because something is becoming clear. This eclipse asks, who is actually meeting you where you are now? This 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your 7th house. And this is bringing a turning point in one-on-one relationships. So this can show up through a romantic relationship, business partnership, client relationship, contract, collaboration, or another important connection where two people are expected to meet each other halfway. And that's really the issue this eclipse may highlight. Is the relationship actually mutual? Or have you been compensating for what the other person isn't bringing? You may realize that you've been doing more of the emotional work, more of the planning, more of the explaining, more of the compromising, or more of the adapting. For some Virgo risings, a relationship may deepen because both people are finally willing to be honest. For others, something may reach a natural conclusion because the imbalance has become too obvious to keep managing. Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in potential and much more interested in consistency. Not who someone could become, who they actually are. Now, this eclipse is going to be forming four major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your ninth house. So, this is connecting your relationships with the beliefs you've developed through experience. So, you may start recognizing where an old belief has been influencing who you choose or what you tolerate. So, maybe you believed relationships always require sacrifice. Maybe you were taught that being understanding means giving endless chances. Maybe you assumed a good partner should automatically know what you need without you having to say it. Or maybe you've outgrown the entire idea of what you thought partnership was supposed to look like. This eclipse can help you update the rules. What if your relationships don't have to follow the model you were given? You may be ready to create something that fits who you are now instead of repeating what once felt normal. Next, this eclipse will be forming an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently, of course, in your first house. So, this is going to be making communication impossible to separate from the way you see yourself. So, you may feel a strong need to say what you actually think, to clarify what you need, to correct an assumption, to stop agreeing simply because it's easier than dealing with someone's reaction. This can be a major moment of self definition. You may realize that you've been shaping yourself around the relationship more than you thought, such as changing your tone, changing your expectations, changing your behavior, making yourself easier to deal with. And at some point, you may ask, where did I go in all of this? That question can bring the clarity that you need. Next, this Pisces eclipse will be forming a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your 10th house. And this is going to bring unexpected developments around your career, public life, or long term direction that affect your relationships. A work opportunity could change your availability. A career shift could expose whether a partnership can adapt. A business relationship may suddenly need different terms. Or a professional change could make you see a personal relationship differently. This aspect can show you very quickly who supports your growth and who becomes uncomfortable when your life starts changing. You may not necessarily need to make a dramatic decision immediately, but pay attention to people's reactions when you become less available, more ambitious, more visible, or more focused on your future. That information matters. And the final aspect is going to be a trine to Mars in Cancer. And this is currently in your 11th house. And this is going to be helping you to act on what you're realizing through your friendships, community, and long term goals. So you may feel more supported by the people around you than you expected. A friend may say exactly what you needed to hear. A new connection may remind you what mutual effort actually feels like. A collaboration could open your eyes to a healthier way of working with people. You may also become much more clear about whether a relationship fits the future you're trying to build. Sometimes a relationship isn't wrong, it simply belongs to a version of your life that you're no longer moving toward. And that distinction can make your next decision much easier. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is to first look at the effort on both sides. Stop judging the relationship by intention alone. Look at what each person is actually contributing. Next is to say what you need clearly. Don't expect people to respond to needs that you've never fully expressed. Next is to update your relationship rules. You don't have to keep repeating dynamics that were modeled for you years ago. Next is to notice who supports your growth. Pay attention to how people respond when your life starts expanding. And finally, stop falling in love with potential. Make decisions based on consistency, reciprocity, and what is actually happening now. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I choose relationships that meet me with honesty, consistency, and mutual effort. I trust what I see clearly and allow my connections to reflect who I am now. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And be sure to hit like if you felt called out in a good way. Pass this on to your friends, hype this video, and subscribe to keep growing with me. And there's only so much I can say here. So a one-on-one with me is where we make it specific to you. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match exactly what you need. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below. So be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Libra rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is in noticing what your body, schedule, and energy have been trying to tell you before life has to get louder. The core energy for you with this eclipse is that you may be done living in constant catch up mode. There's a difference between having a full life and having a life that constantly feels like it's chasing you. This eclipse can make that difference obvious. You may realize that some of your exhaustion isn't coming from doing too much. It's coming from doing too much of what no longer makes sense. So, too many obligations, too many small tasks, too many things that need your attention simply because no one has stopped to ask whether they still need to be there. This eclipse may help you to see where your daily life has become unnecessarily complicated. What are you still maintaining that no longer deserves a place in your routine? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your 6th house. So that means it's going to bring a turning point around work, health, routines, responsibilities, and the way your everyday life actually functions. So this can bring a change in job, workload, schedule, health habits, coworkers, clients, or the systems you rely on to keep everything moving. But the bigger realization may be that some of your daily stress has become so normal that you stopped questioning it. You may be constantly available, constantly reacting, constantly fixing something, constantly fitting your own needs into whatever time is left. And at some point, you may realize that being good at handling a lot has quietly become the reason everyone expects you to keep handling more. That may stop working now. Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in proving how much you can juggle and much more interested in creating a life that doesn't require you to constantly recover from it. Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form four major aspects. The first being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your eighth house. So, this is going to be connecting your daily life with the responsibilities, emotional weight, and shared obligations you've taken on from other people. You may realize that part of your exhaustion isn't even yours. Maybe you're carrying someone else's financial stress, someone else's emotional crisis, someone else's workload, or even someone else's problem because you're the one who usually knows how to fix it. This eclipse can help you see where support has turned into over responsibility. And that distinction matters. This energy is about asking yourself, are you helping because you genuinely want to, or because you become afraid of what happens if you stop? You may find that some things function just fine without you managing every detail. Next, this Pisces eclipse is going to form an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your 12th house. So, this is going to be making it easier to see the mental patterns behind your routines. So, you may notice how much of your day is driven by invisible pressure, the need to stay useful, the need to stay ahead, the fear of forgetting something, or even the belief that resting means falling behind. You may also become aware of how often your mind stays on, even when your body is technically resting. This can be a strong moment for noticing the difference between actual responsibility and anxiety disguised as responsibility. So, use this energy to ask yourself, if I stopped trying to anticipate every possible problem, how much of my day would actually change? That answer could surprise you. Next, this Pisces eclipse will form a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your ninth house, which can disrupt the way that you've been structuring your life around a plan that no longer fits. So, travel, legal matters, education, teaching, publishing, or a new direction could suddenly interfere with your usual routine. Or a new belief may simply make your old schedule feel impossible to continue. You may realize that the life you want next requires a completely different way of organizing your time. Because Uranus is involved in this aspect, that can feel inconvenient at first. But it can also be exactly what forces you to stop building your life around what used to work. Sometimes your routine doesn't need better optimization, it needs a different purpose. Finally, this eclipse will form a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your 10th house. So, this is going to be giving you the momentum to make practical changes around work and career. So, this can help you to feel ready to set a stronger boundary with your job, change your schedule, take on a new role, restructure your business, delegate, stop offering something that drains too much of your time. or become much more direct about what you are and aren't available for professionally. This can also show you that your career grows faster when your daily life is actually built to support it. So you don't need more hours. You just may need fewer distractions, fewer unnecessary obligations, and better use of the hours you already have. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is to first look at what keeps making your days harder than they need to be. If the same task, obligation, or system keeps creating stress, change the system. Next is to stop automatically volunteering your energy. Be sure to pause before taking responsibility for something that isn't actually yours. Next is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. Exhaustion, tension, and burnout are information. Next is to build your schedule around what matters most. Don't keep giving your best hours to low value responsibilities. And finally, make one practical change at work. Delegate, simplify, reduce, renegotiate, or remove something that has become unsustainable. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I create a daily life that supports my energy, my work, and my well being. I release unnecessary pressure and make room for what truly deserves my time. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And of course, be sure to tap like if you felt called out in a good way. Pass this on to your friends, hype this video, and subscribe to keep growing with me. And if you know you're meant for more but can't quite access it yet, a one-on-one with me will help you step into that version of yourself with clarity and direction. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match what you actually need. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Scorpio rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power lies in noticing what still feels alive to you and what you're only continuing because you've already invested so much in it. Under this energy, you may be ready to stop forcing yourself to care. Sometimes we stay attached to something long after the excitement is gone. So, this could be a project, a relationship, a goal, or even a version of ourselves. And we're not holding on to this because it still feels meaningful, but because we remember how much it once meant to us. This eclipse can make that difference very clear. So you may realize that you've been trying to recreate an old feeling instead of admitting that your interests have changed. And that can be freeing for you. So this eclipse is about asking, what are you still trying to revive that may simply be complete? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your 5th house. So, this is going to bring a turning point around passion projects, creativity, dating, children, pleasure, and the things that you choose because they feel personal. This can bring a relationship to a decision point. A creative project may reach completion. Something involving a child may become more emotionally important. Or you may finally decide whether something you've been thinking about doing actually deserves more of your time. For some Scorpio risings, the biggest realization is that you've been trying too hard to make yourself excited about something that no longer excites you. So, a hobby may have become work, a relationship became obligation, a passion project became another thing on the list. And once that happens, forcing more effort into it doesn't always bring the feeling back. Sometimes it just creates resentment. So, over the next 6 months, you may become much less willing to perform enthusiasm and much more interested in what actually pulls you in naturally. Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form four major aspects. One of them being a sextile to Chiron, currently in Taurus in your seventh house. So, this is going to be connecting your personal fulfillment with your one on one relationships. So, you may notice how much your relationships have influenced what you allow yourself to want. So, maybe you've chosen what keeps the peace. Maybe you've toned yourself down to make a relationship easier. Maybe you've been focused on being chosen, then asking whether you actually enjoy the connection. This eclipse can shift that. So you may start caring less about whether someone likes you and more about how you feel when you're around them. And that's a very different standard. Do I actually like who I am in this relationship? That question can tell you more than whether the other person is interested. Next, this eclipse will form an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your 11th house. So, this is going to be putting your personal desires up against your long term goals and social life. So, you may find yourself thinking about whether a creative project fits the audience that you've built, whether a relationship fits the future you want, whether your friendships support the version of yourself that's emerging, or whether you've become so focused on what will work for everyone else that you stopped asking what you actually want. This can be especially relevant for creators, business owners, or anyone with an audience. You may realize you've been creating for the response, for engagement, for approval, or for what you think people expect from you. And at some point, the question becomes, would I still want to make this if no one was watching? That answer can help you reconnect with what actually matters. Next, this eclipse will form a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your eighth house. This is going to bring unpredictability around trust, intimacy, money, or emotional vulnerability. So, a romantic situation may suddenly reveal more than you expected. A financial development could affect a creative project. A collaboration may need different terms. Or you may simply realize that the emotional cost of something is much higher than you thought. This aspect can make you much more sensitive to where you're giving someone access to you without receiving enough in return. And not just financially, but emotionally, creatively, and energetically. So you may decide that something is no longer worth what it requires from you. And that realization can change the relationship very quickly. Finally, this eclipse will be forming a trine with Mars and Cancer, currently in your ninth house. So, this is giving you the momentum to take what you've learned and move in a different direction. So, you may feel ready to travel, study, publish, teach, share your work more widely, or take a personal interest more seriously. So, something that you've created may be ready for a larger audience. Something you've learned through experience may be ready to become something you teach. Or a change in perspective may simply make you feel excited about your life again. This is where the eclipse starts to feel less like an ending and more like a reset. You don't need to force inspiration back into the old thing. You may just need something new to care about. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is to first stop pretending you're still excited. If something feels complete, let yourself be honest about it. Next is to pay attention to how relationships affect your sense of self. Being wanted isn't the same as feeling fulfilled. Next is to create for yourself before creating for the response. Reconnect with what you actually want to say, make, or build. Next is to look at the emotional cost. If something requires too much trust, money, energy, or compromise, make sure the return still feels worth it. And finally, give yourself something new to care about. A new idea, place, subject, project, or experience may wake up a part of you that's been flat for a while. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is I trust what still feels alive to me. I release what has run its course and make room for experiences, relationships, and creations that feel meaningful now. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you felt seen, let's go deeper in a one-on-one session where we will shift your entire life concept. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match what you actually are moving through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Sagittarius rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is in recognizing when the place, role, or dynamic you've been calling home no longer feels like where you belong. Something about your foundation may be ready to change. Sometimes the biggest changes start privately, before anyone else sees them, before you make the move, before you have the conversation, before you even know exactly what you're going to do. You just start feeling differently about where you are. So, a home could feel too small. A family dynamic feels too familiar. A role you've always played starts feeling exhausting. Or a version of stability you once worked hard to create suddenly feels more limiting than secure. This eclipse can bring that realization to the surface. What are you still calling home simply because it's familiar? This 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse lands in your 4th house. So, this is going to be bringing a turning point around family, your living situation, emotional security, your physical home, and the private life that you return to when the rest of the world goes quiet. So, this energy can bring a move, family development, change in a living arrangement, or an important decision around where and how you want to live. But the deeper shift may be around the role you've been playing behind closed doors. So maybe you've been the one who keeps everyone together, the one who stays strong, the one who adapts, the one who absorbs tension so everyone else can move on. And at some point, you may realize that you're tired of being the emotional structure holding everything up. This eclipse can also make you much more aware of what your environment does to you. Does your home restore you, or does it constantly remind you of who you've had to be? Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in maintaining a familiar setup and much more interested in creating a private life that actually feels safe, calm, and like your own. Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form four major aspects. One of them being a sextile to Chiron, currently in Taurus, in your sixth house. So, this is going to be connecting your emotional foundation with your daily habits, work, and health. You may notice how much your home life has been affecting your body and routine. Maybe you can't fully relax at home. Maybe you're constantly handling other people's needs. Maybe your schedule has been built around keeping everything functioning. Or maybe you've normalized stress because it's been part of your environment for so long. This eclipse can make the connection between your surroundings and your well being much harder to ignore. What would your daily life look like if your home actually supported you instead of constantly needing something from you? That may be one of the most useful questions you can ask yourself now. Next, this eclipse will be forming an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your 10th house. So, this is going to create some tension between your private life and your public responsibilities. So, career decisions may affect your home. Home decisions may affect your career. So, you may be thinking about relocation, work life balance, a professional change, family obligations, or whether your current setup can realistically support where you're headed next. You could also become more aware of how much your professional identity follows you home. So, the emails, the planning, the mental load, the feeling that you should always be doing something. At some point, home has to stop feeling like another workplace. So, this is a good time to ask yourself, do I actually have a private life, or do I just have a different location where I keep working? That answer may tell you a lot. Next, this eclipse will be forming a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your seventh house. So, of course, this is going to bring unpredictability through relationships, partnerships, clients, or any contracts. Someone else's decision may affect your living situation. So, a relationship could suddenly require more space, more honesty, or a completely different arrangement. A business partnership or contract could also change in a way that influences your home life. So, this can expose where you've been building your sense of stability around someone else being predictable. And if they aren't, you may have to create more independence than you expected. This decision may feel uncomfortable at first, but it can also show you that your foundation needs to belong to you first. And finally, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your eighth house. So, this is going to help you to make a practical move around any shared resources, emotional ties, or financial support. So, you may be ready to divide assets, handle debt, deal with any shared bills, change a financial arrangement, or have a direct conversation about who is responsible for what. This energy can also help you to address any deeper emotional entanglements within family or close relationships. Something you've avoided because it felt too complicated may suddenly feel easier to face. And that's going to be because you are clearer now. Sometimes emotional freedom starts with a very practical decision, such as a boundary, a payment, a signature, a move, or a conversation. One clean action can change the entire emotional tone of a situation. Now, some of the best ways for you to best work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is first to look at how your home actually makes you feel, not how it looks and not what it represents, but how your body feels when you're there. Next is to stop automatically carrying the emotional load. You don't have to be the person who keeps every family or household dynamic functioning. Next is to create real separation between work and home. Your private life needs room to exist without constantly being invaded by professional responsibilities. Next is to make your stability less dependent on someone else's behavior. So look at how you can build more choice, independence, and flexibility into your foundation. And finally, handle one practical issue you've been avoiding. So a financial, household, or family decision may become much easier once you stop putting it off. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I create a foundation that feels safe, supportive, and fully mine. I trust myself to change what no longer works and build a private life that truly restores me. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you feel like you've outgrown where you are, but don't know what comes next, a one-on-one with me will help you understand exactly what's shifting and why. Plus, I have over 10 different session types that you can customize to whatever you're working through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below. So be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Capricorn rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in noticing when the way you've been thinking about something is creating more pressure than the situation itself. Under this energy, a different story may be ready to replace the old one. Sometimes the thing that keeps us stuck isn't the problem, it's the explanation we've built around it. The story about why it happened, what it means about us, what we think will happen next, or what we assume other people are thinking. This eclipse can expose where one old story has been influencing your decisions for too long. And once you see the pattern clearly, you may realize you don't need a better explanation. You may just need a different one. So, this is a great time to ask yourself, what story are you still repeating that no longer matches the life you're living now? So, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse is going to land in your third house, meaning it's going to bring a turning point around communication, learning, writing, thinking, conversations, siblings, and the way that you make sense of your everyday life. So, this can bring an important conversation, decision, message, contract, piece of information, or realization that changes how you see something. But this eclipse may also make you aware of the way your own thoughts have been keeping certain situations alive. You may notice how often you replay a conversation, how quickly you assume the worst, how much time you spend rehearsing what you'll say, or how often you think through every possible outcome before anything has even happened. At some point, overthinking stops being preparation and it becomes a loop. So, this eclipse can help you see the loop for what it is. Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in having the perfect explanation and much more interested in saying what needs to be said, getting the information you actually need, and moving on. Now, this eclipse is going to form four major aspects, one of them being a sextile to Chiron currently in Taurus in your fifth house. So, this is going to be connecting the way you think and communicate with confidence, creativity, dating, children, and personal expression. So, you may become more aware of how often you've edited yourself before anyone else had the chance to respond. So, maybe you hold back the joke, the idea, the opinion, the creative risk, or the thing you really want to say because being misunderstood may have started feeling more dangerous than being invisible. This eclipse can help you loosen that. You may not need everyone to get it. You may just need to stop abandoning your own point before anyone else ever hears it. So, what would you say if you weren't trying to make it impossible for someone to misunderstand you? That may be where your voice starts changing. Next, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form an opposition to Mercury currently in Virgo in your ninth house. So, this is going to be creating tension between the facts in front of you and the bigger meaning you're trying to give them. So, you may be tempted to turn one conversation, one delay, one piece of information, or one unexpected development into a much larger conclusion. This aspect can make you question what you believe, but it can also show you where you've been treating an assumption like a fact. So, a conversation could challenge something that you thought you knew. A new piece of information may shift your perspective, or you may realize that you've been trying to make every experience mean something before you've even let it be what it is. So, ask yourself, what do I actually know and what have I filled in myself? That distinction can save you a lot of unnecessary mental energy. Next, this lunar eclipse will be forming a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your sixth house. So, this is going to bring unpredictability around work, routines, health, and your everyday responsibilities. So, your schedule can suddenly change. A coworker may say something unexpected. A work process could need to be rethought, or your body may make it clear that your current pace isn't sustainable. This can also expose how much mental clutter is being created by your daily environment. So, too many notifications, too many small decisions, too many people needing something from you, or too many unfinished tasks living in your head. And the solution may not be to become better at managing all of it, it may be to remove some of it. Sometimes peace of mind starts with fewer inputs. The final aspect this eclipse will form is a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your seventh house. This energy is going to help you finally have the conversation you've been thinking about. So, this can be especially important in a relationship, business partnership, client situation, or close one on one dynamic. You may feel more confident saying what you need, asking a direct question, setting a boundary, or making an agreement clear. And because Mars is involved, you may be less interested in endlessly discussing the same issue. You want movement that can be useful. Just make sure you're speaking to solve something, not simply to discharge frustration. Sometimes one honest sentence can do more than weeks of internal debate. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with this Pisces lunar eclipse energy is first to catch the story before it becomes the truth. Notice when your mind fills in information you don't actually have. Next is to say it more simply. Remember that you don't need 10 explanations when one clear sentence will do. Next is to reduce unnecessary input. Too much information, noise, and stimulation can make every decision feel harder than it is. Next is to let yourself be misunderstood sometimes. Clarity matters, but controlling everyone's interpretation of you doesn't. And finally, have the direct conversation. If you've been thinking about saying something for weeks, it may be time to actually say it. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is: I trust what I know, speak clearly, and release the stories that no longer fit my life. My mind supports my peace instead of working against it. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, be sure to show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you know you're meant for more, but can't quite access it yet, a one-on-one with me will help you step into that version of yourself with clarity and direction. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match what you actually need. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and get started. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Aquarius rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in knowing the difference between what makes you feel secure and what simply keeps you attached. Under the energy of this eclipse, your standards may be changing before your circumstances do. Sometimes your relationship with money changes before your income does. Sometimes your sense of self-worth shifts before anyone around you notices. Sometimes you simply reach a point where something you used to tolerate no longer feels acceptable. That can be what this eclipse brings up. You may look at what you're earning, spending, accepting, charging, or investing in and realize your standards have changed. And once that happens, your choices usually start changing too. Where are you still settling for something that no longer matches what you know you're worth? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse lands in your second house, which is going to bring a turning point around money, income, possessions, your self worth, and what you consider valuable. This can absolutely show up through a financial change. So, an income source may end, a new one may begin. You may change your pricing, your spending, your budget, or the way you make money. But this eclipse can also expose where money has become emotionally loaded. So maybe earning more has become tied to proving yourself. Maybe spending has become a way to soothe discomfort. Maybe you've stayed in a low paying situation because it felt safer than asking for more. Or maybe you've confused being needed with being valuable. That distinction can become much clearer under this eclipse. Over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in simply having enough and much more interested in making sure the way you earn, spend, and use your resources actually reflects what matters to you. Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form four major aspects. One of them being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your fourth house. So, this is going to be connecting your relationship with money to your deeper sense of safety. You may start seeing where your financial habits are shaped by what you experienced growing up. So, maybe money felt unpredictable. Maybe security was tied to having control. Maybe you learned that the safest thing was to depend on yourself. Or maybe having enough became less about the actual number and more about never feeling vulnerable again. This eclipse can help you separate present day reality from old survival rules. How much of what you call financial security is actually fear of never needing anyone? That question can open up a much healthier relationship with both money and support. Next, this eclipse will form an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your eighth house. So, this is going to be putting your own money directly across from shared money, debt, support, investments, and financial agreements with other people. So, this can bring conversations around who owes what, who owns what needs to be repaid, what should be shared, or where an agreement needs to become clearer. You may need to review numbers more carefully, read the fine print, ask the awkward question, or clarify the terms. And don't assume that something is fair simply because it's familiar. This can also be emotional. So you may realize that financial support has been giving someone more influence over your decisions than you're comfortable with. Or you may be the one carrying more than your share. Either way, this eclipse can help you make the exchange more honest. Next, this eclipse will form a square to Uranus in Gemini, currently in your fifth house, which can bring unpredictability around money through creativity, dating, children, hobbies, or personal projects. So, a passion project may suddenly require more investment. A creative idea could unexpectedly become profitable. Something involving a child may change your financial priorities. Or you may simply decide you're tired of spending money on things that don't actually add anything meaningful to your life. This aspect can also change the way you think about pleasure. So maybe you've been rewarding yourself with things when what you actually need is time or experience, freedom, something interesting to look forward to. So your definition of worth it may change very quickly around this eclipse. And that's going to be very useful information for you. Finally, this eclipse will form a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your sixth house. And this is helping you to make practical changes around work, routine, and income. So you may feel ready to ask for more money, take on different clients, change your workload, build another income stream, cut expenses, create a better budget, or finally put more structure around something that could make you money. This aspect is also useful because it's going to turn a realization into something concrete. So instead of you just thinking, I deserve better, you'll start changing the way you work because self worth gets much more real when your schedule, pricing, boundaries, and decisions begin reflecting it. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with this Pisces lunar eclipse energy is to first look at where your money is actually going. Your spending usually reveals your priorities more clearly than your intentions do. So be sure to pay attention to that. Next is to review what you're being paid for your time. Make sure the exchange still feels fair. Next is to question old financial survival rules. What once kept you safe may now be keeping you limited. Next is to spend more intentionally. Choose what genuinely adds value instead of automatically reaching for what's familiar. And finally, make one practical money move. Raise the rate, cut the expense, change the agreement, start the savings plan, or take the first step toward a new income source. A great affirmation for you during this Pisces lunar eclipse is I trust my value and let my financial choices reflect them. I earn, spend, and receive in ways that support the life I truly want to build. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And of course, be sure to tap like if you felt called out in a good way. Pass this on to your friends, hype this video, and subscribe to keep growing with me. And if you felt seen, let's go deeper in a one-on-one session where we will shift your entire life concept. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match what you actually are moving through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching. Hey, Pisces rising. So, for this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, your power is going to be in recognizing when you've changed enough that your old way of moving through life no longer works. So, under this energy, you may be seeing yourself more clearly than you have in a long time. Sometimes the biggest shift isn't what happens around you, it's what you stop believing about yourself, a role you thought you had to play, an identity you built around surviving something, or even a version of yourself that made sense at one point but doesn't anymore. This eclipse can make that especially clear. You may notice that the person you've been trying to return to is no longer the person you're meant to be, and that can be a relief. What if the version of you you're looking for is already gone because you've become someone else? Now, this 4-degree Pisces lunar eclipse, of course, lands in your first house, making this one of the most personal turning points of the year. This can bring visible changes. So, you may change your appearance, your priorities, your direction, your boundaries, or the way you present yourself to the world. But the bigger shift is internal. You may realize you've been identifying with a version of yourself that was built around a completely different season of life. So maybe you became the strong one, the accommodating one, the one who always understood everyone else, the one who kept going no matter what, the one who made peace with things because you didn't know what else to do. And now you may be tired of carrying that identity. So, over the next 6 months, you may become much less interested in preserving who you've been and much more interested in living in a way that reflects who you actually are now. Now, this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to form four major aspects, one of them being a sextile to Chiron in Taurus, currently in your third house. So, this is going to be connecting your identity with the way you speak, think, and tell your own story. So, you may start hearing yourself differently. The way you describe your past, the way you explain who you are, the way you introduce yourself, the things you automatically say about what you're good at, what you're bad at, or what kind of person you are. Some of those statements may be outdated. So you may realize that you've been repeating a version of yourself long after you've already changed. So, what do you keep saying about yourself that is no longer true? That question can be surprisingly freeing because identity often changes first in language, then behavior catches up. Next, this eclipse will form in opposition to Mercury in Virgo, currently in your seventh house. So, this is going to bring relationships directly into the way that you see yourself. So, a conversation with a partner, client, collaborator, or someone close to you may show you something important about who you've become. You may notice that some people still speak to you as if you're an older version of yourself. Or you may realize you've been changing your behavior depending on who you're around. More agreeable here, more guarded here, more quiet with one person, more responsible with another. And at some point, you may ask, who am I when I'm not adjusting myself around someone else? That can be an important realization under this eclipse because the goal isn't to become less connected, it's to stop losing track of yourself inside of connection. Next, this Pisces lunar eclipse will be forming a square with Uranus in Gemini, currently in your fourth house. So, of course, this is going to bring some unpredictability around family, home, your living situation, or your emotional foundation. So, a change at home could make you see yourself differently. A family dynamic could suddenly shift. You may feel a stronger need for independence, or you may simply realize that the environment around you still reflects a version of yourself you've already outgrown. This can create restlessness. So you may want more space, a different setup, a new location, a stronger boundary, or just a home that feels more like who you are now. And that may be the real point of this energy because sometimes identity changes become much easier when your environment stops constantly pulling you back into the old one. Finally, this eclipse will be forming a trine to Mars in Cancer, currently in your fifth house. So, this is going to be giving you more confidence to act on what you're discovering about yourself. So, you may feel more creative, more playful, more willing to take a risk, more interested in dating, more connected to a personal project, or simply more willing to do something because you want to. That last part may matter more than it sounds. You may have spent so much time considering everyone else's needs, reactions, and expectations that following your own desires started feeling unfamiliar. This aspect can change that. So you may not need a 5-year plan. You may just need one decision that feels like you. One thing you choose because it excites you. One thing you make because you want to make it. One thing you stop explaining. And that can be enough to remind you who you are now. Now, some of the best ways for you to work with the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is to first stop introducing yourself through old labels. If a description of yourself feels outdated, stop repeating it. Next is to notice where you change depending on who's around. So be sure to pay attention to the relationships that make you feel more like yourself and the ones that make you disappear. Next is to let your environment reflect who you are now. So change something at home, in your routine, or in your space that supports the version of you you are becoming. Next is to choose something because you want it, not because it's useful, expected, or easy to explain. And finally, let people adjust to the new you. You don't have to stay familiar just because other people are more comfortable with the old version. A great affirmation for you for this Pisces lunar eclipse is I trust who I am now. I release old identities, speak about myself with honesty, and allow my life to reflect the person I have become. Be sure to let me know how the energy of this Pisces lunar eclipse is showing up for you in the comments below. And if this is your kind of space, show this video some love with a like, share it with your friends, hype this video, and subscribe so we stay locked in. And if you felt seen here, let's go deeper in a one-on-one session where we will shift your entire life concept. Plus, I offer over 10 different session styles to match exactly what you're moving through. All of my offerings are linked in the description box below, so be sure to check them out and book your session. I appreciate you, and thanks so much for watching.